are you? This is Pastor Jenny, former practicing attorney, pastor, coach, proudly follower of Jesus, mama of two teenage kids, and a bunch of other kids that call me mama. I'm so glad to be here. Oh my gosh, this Lori Vallow's trial is pretty addictive. And if I don't stop, I would be listening for the rest of the day, but I can't do that. Because I listen and I read and I listen and I go into rabbit trails because I really enjoy this type of stuff. But let me just give you the summary of the trial for May 1st, 2023. Well, the first big thing is that a lady by the name of Kelly Coleman, who is a senior data analyst for a private DNA lab that works with the FBI. It's a super state-of-the-art agency. She stated very clearly that the hair attached to the duct tape used to wrap JJ, that hair is Lori's. And that is 1 in 71 billion probability. So we have Lori. Lori can be placed in the murder scene. Interestingly enough, because the hair was blonde, she received DNA profiles for Lori Vallow, Tally Ryan, and Melanie Gibbs. Obviously, remember, Melanie Gibbs had been placed in the proximity of JJ the night of his death, and she has blonde hair. And I guess Tally, not quite blonde, but maybe just to eliminate. At any rate, the profile of Lori Vallow was attached to the hair, found stuck to the tape that was found in the body of JJ Vallow. The probability is 1 in 71 billions. The hair belongs to Lori Vallow, beyond a shadow of a doubt. The defense tried to contradict the results based on DNA data, and it really, really surprised me because we're talking about Lori Vallow is the mother of JJ, and I think he would have been a lot luckier if he would have tried to say, well, how do you know that DNA, that hair did not get there in the course of Lori's regular responsibilities as JJ's mom? But I'm gonna drop it there because I would hate for to give any tip to anybody. Not that I think the attorney is watching this video, but I'm not gonna go there. But it did surprise me because it seems to me that it would have been a lot easier to sell that than to try, as he did, to attack the actual results of the DNA by challenging the alleles and a bunch of other stuff that is way too complicated for me to go into details. So Lori's attitude was like, huh? There was no surprise. There was no concern. There was no expression. So take that for what you will, right? Like, if I was innocent of killing my child, if I had nothing to do and I was being accused of conspire against murdering him, and my hair was found, and the assumption was being made in a court of law that because my hair was there, I was there when he was killed, believe me, there would be a reaction. And the fact that there's no reaction, in my estimation, silence. Sometimes silence is more powerful than noise, right? Have you heard the sound of silence? Silence has a sound. And legally, it cannot necessarily be considered as an admission of guilt, and a jury will never tell you that. But we all know that when someone is accused and they're silent, it does create a question mark. And, judges make a big deal out of you can never hold it against an accused killer or an accused whatever if they choose not to testify, because that's their right against self-incrimination. Having said that, there's a lot of jurors that are interviewed after the fact, and they're like, we would have liked to hear from this person. But then again, when you know that the set of facts is so clear that there's nothing you can tell that is going to move the pendulum in your favor, then you're better off not trying to move the pendulum in your favor, because also speaking can really be counted against you. But like at least like a reaction from Lori from where she's sitting, a zero reaction. Although her hair was found in her son's JJ duct tape, and the duct tape that was used to bind his body. Huge. And I don't think that we're done with DNA evidence, but this was pretty huge. And you can tell that the prosecution is drawing to an end its case in chief, because they're getting heavier and heavier. Interestingly enough, the next witness, there were only like 3 witnesses, but it was heavy with information, right? The next witness was talking about how Ian Pulaski, who is Melanie Boudreau's second husband, so Melanie Boudreau is Lori Vallow's niece. She lost her mom when she was in her early 20s, and she is very attached to Lori Vallow, and she was drinking the Kool-Aid, and she was believing all the stupidity of Lori being a translated goddess and living in prior lives. And she's one of those that every time she got interviewed, she rubbed me the wrong way, because there's just so much arrogance in that girl. So much arrogance. And yeah, just like this air of superiority, right? But she basically abandoned her kids. She didn't show up in court to the custody hearing, and yet she showed up later in the dark of night with Alex Vallow to retrieve her kids from her husband, Brandon Boudreau's home. And she was trying to manipulate the police, and at the end, the police had to arrest her to get her out of there, because she was violating a trespassing order. But she wanted to say that she had a right and that she was scared for the safety of her kids, when in reality, she had dumped a bunch of her kids' things outside of her curve. And only God knows what would have happened if she had had access to those kids. Let's not forget, when they moved to the compound in Resburg, close to where Shade Bell lived, let's not forget that the Wi-Fi password was too many kids. And that when Alex told Lori that that was the password, she said, funny. It would be funny if it wasn't for the fact that her kids were killed and murdered. At any rate, let's go back. So the police says, the guy from the FBI says, yeah, Ian Pulaski marries Melanie Boudreau, gets scared because Melanie starts talking to him about all these crazy beliefs, and he gets scared. And his ex-wife, I mean, they had joint custody of their kids, and his ex-wife is like, you need to go to the police. This is really strange. He was scared, so he goes, and they convince him to become a cooperating witness and to wear a wire. And it's very interesting. I think he's going to testify, and I think he's going to show up, because they left it at that. It almost felt like they wanted to hint to the fact that Ian Pulaski is going to testify, but they didn't go into any details about what his testimony is going to be. So just they mentioned that. All they said was that he had become a cooperating witness, that he had wore a wire. But let's remember that whole thing about people getting dark, people becoming zombies, people having to be murdered so that they would be delivered from the zombies that had attacked them. All that stuff came from those wired conversations between Ian Pulaski and Lori, and Ian Pulaski and Chad, and Ian Pulaski and Melanie and Alex. This guy, it's a superstar. And that's what Melanie Boudreau gets from marrying someone that she's only known like for 2 weeks. That's how long. Now, my husband proposed to me a month into us starting corresponding, but we had fasted. I had checked his criminal background, something he didn't realize until many years later after we were married. I mean, I had done my homework. He had done his homework. We had prayed. We had fasted. But 2 weeks. And then she trust him with all the crazy stuff that they believed in. So that's what happened. So at any rate, Alex moves to Rexburg on September 1st. I'm going to read all this, guys, because it's a lot of information. On Sunday, September 8th, Alex Cox Activities tracks him going to Yellowstone from the complex back to the park and then to Sade Bell's house, goes into the park, does several stops, but they're very brief. Then some pictures are taken at 3:49, which are the last known images of Tylee being alive. And so again, he drives around the park at 11 a.m. We know they're together. So we are not sure whether that was like the last trip of the family together. We don't know if Lori took that picture like the last picture of my kids alive, because that's the picture where Tylee is holding JJ. But one thing we do know, nothing happened at that park. The vehicle drives a whole lot throughout the park, but it never stops long enough for anything significant to happen. But the vehicle, Alex Cos, they arrived to Lori's house, and between midnight and almost 9 a.m., that is when Alex spends that whole time in Lori's house. And this is where policemen believe that Tylee was killed. Why? Because from the moment he moved on September 1 till September 9, when this happens, he would stay in Lori's house until around midnight, visiting and whatever. But starting midnight, he would go to his own apartment and stay there for the rest of the night. But that night, after driving all that through the park, he literally stays all night long in Lori's Daybell's house. Then, let me see here. Then on September 10th, so this happens, right? On September 10th, the phone travels north to Sade Bell's, gets there at 9:15. While in Shad's property, Alex is placed at the shed, then at the gate, then at the point, then at the pond, and he stays there until 11. Around 11:22, after Alex's data point indicates that he is leaving the house, Shad sends a very uncharacteristically long text message to his wife telling her that he was burning 3 limbs and he saw a raccoon and he killed a raccoon and he buried it in the pet cemetery. And the reason this is important is because when the police saw this text and compare it to Alex Cox's data point, cell phone data point, now you have the two of them in the same location bearing, according to Chad, a raccoon, but the police says raccoons don't come out in the morning. They don't. They only come out at night. And so between that and the fact that they're both admitting that they are there, that is where the police goes. And that literally, that pond, one of the data points associated with Alex Cox, that is where they find Tylee's body. So Tylee is presumed to have been murdered on the 9th and buried, and it took 4 hours, and no kidding. Because as we know, her body was burned, her body was mutilated, and there's many of the tools that they got at Chad's garage where Alex Cox is placed, where they found Tylee's body DNA and tissue in those tools. Well, on September the 23rd, moving forward. Oh, by the way, every time Alex kills someone, he eats Mexican. I just thought I would add it because it's so insensitive. It's just so horrible, right? But going on September the 23rd, Alex Device also travels for his apartment to Shad's house. Data points indicate that between 9:55 and 11, he's by the pound. Then he goes, but he doesn't actually stop on a very specific point. until a specific time, and it is 17 minutes. And so, as you guys know, JJ is buried very carefully. The grave has been digged. There's been stones placed so that when the decomposition starts setting in, the land doesn't come down. And so the defense tries to say, do you think there's enough time to bury a child in 17 minutes? And he says, no. But then the prosecution comes and says, well, could he have done it with help? And he says, yeah, if there had been help, yeah. I have something better for you. If the person that lives in that house is a grave digger and has a lot of experience digging graves, and he can dig in advance and have it all prepped out so that when you come, all you have to do is drop a little body and the grave digger is taking care of the rest of it, yeah, you can get it all done in 17 minutes. And that, in my humble estimation, is what happens and what the cell phone's data points are really indicated. On that same September the 23rd, after eating Mexican again, he visits a store because he wants to tint the window of the same Jeep that Brandon Boudreaux had insured for Tylee Ryan's use. But of course, Tylee is no longer around. She was murdered on September 9th. On that same day, Alex goes to several places. He also gets a couple of burner cell phones from Walmart store because, of course, he was smarter than anybody and they weren't going to be tracked. On October the 2nd is the actual attempt against Brandon Boudreaux in Arizona, and receipts found in that Jeep and receipts found in his apartment unit after he died prove that Alex Cox was in these locations. So he attempts, and remember, we saw the Google searches, right, in Lori Vallow, how to take out the seat in a Jeep. So, and remember, when he attempted against the life of Boudreaux, he pointed the gun from inside. They had to remove the tire from the Jeep. So he obviously failed, but Brandon recognizes him. And that is what starts things, right? I just wish things would have moved a lot faster with that report from Brandon Boudreaux, because his murder attempt was on October 2nd. Tammy Daybell's murder attempt was on October the 9th. Of course, these things take a while, right? Hindsight is always 20/20. He starts practicing in shooting ranges, right? From October the 3rd until October the 9th, which is when the attempt against Tammy Daybell's happens. Interesting thing, data points identify Alex moving and purchasing with cash items like rain point pants, ski masks, gloves. All those things was purchased right before Tammy's attempted murder. Then on October 9, rather than driving directly to his house, he passes his house and he drives to Shad's house and makes a couple of circles. Then he stays for a while in his house. Then he buys another burner cell phone. And it is through that cell phone that he starts texting Shad Daybell. Nobody can tell the content of the text messages, but he texts like 10 text messages. So Shad Daybell is so involved in this, right? These pants after Tammy Daybell's attempted murder are found in Lori's garage, still with the price tags on. Tammy's attempted murder occurs in October 9th, and Alex is wearing all of these things, which is why, because it's very dark, Tammy Daybell seems inclined to believe that it was a paintball guy, and she does the post on Facebook, bless her little heart. No, it wasn't a paintball player. It was a murderer that did not want to be recognized. And obviously, those shooting classes didn't help him because he missed her. And it breaks my heart because I think at some point in her Facebook message, Tammy says that she was about to hit him with some frozen steaks that she had because she had just gone grocery shopping. And as I said in my prior email, and by the way, there's a playlist in the description of this video that is going to take you to the playlist because I've covered every single day of this trial and intend to continue covering it. She said rather than doing that, she decided to call to Chad for help. If only she knew that Chad and this guy had been texting like 10 times in the course of a couple of hours. If she only knew that Chad was probably quite disappointed when he discovered that Alex Cox's attempts against his wife were unsuccessful. Of course, we know that 10 days later, he himself asphyxiates her. Did he? There's really no evidence that Alex went back to his house and that he was there when she actually died. So the only thing I can conclude is that Chad, who had motive, opportunity, and room, was the one that ended up asphyxiating her. Shortly after this, after the attempt against Tammy's life, but before she gets actually murdered, Chad and Lori are looking for an apartment to live, and they stayed. We are a clean-cut couple with no children. Nobody knew then, but they knew that Tylee had been killed on the 9th and JJ on the 23rd. The defense keeps trying to blame it all on Chad, talking about his writings and the changes in Chad. But one thing is extremely clear. Alex Cox was super involved in each murder, and there is a clear connection between Alex and Lori, removing the seats from the Jeep, the searches that Lori was making, all the time that he was spending in Lori's house, all the clothing that he was buying, all the text messages between him and Lori and Chad and him. Now it's obvious that the case in chief for the defense has not started, but it is obvious that the defense is going to call him a rogue individual that acted without any direction from Lori. But the 10 text messages between him and Chad prove that Chad knew. We know that Chad had been talking to a bunch of people, had been telling to a lot of people that he had received revelation that Tammy was going to die before she was 50. We know that he had increased the life insurance amount for Tammy Daybell. So Chad knew. Chad was in touch with the guy that attempted to kill her. And Chad was right there the evening that she got asphyxiated. And also, he tried to convince them that she had had seizures, but in the autopsy, they discovered that there were no evidence that she had had seizures. He tried to convince her that she was in a very poor healthy condition, but we received evidence the other day from several witnesses that Tammy was practicing high-intensity activities like Zumba and Cogling, which is like Irish dance in steroids. So all of this evidence was obtained, and the prosecution did a very, very poor job keeping the defense abreast. And because of that, right before Lori's trial, the mitigation specialist, who is someone that takes a look at all the evidence for death cases, the mitigation specialist told the judge, I don't have enough time. And so the only way the death penalty would have been able to stay on the table is if Lori would have yielded her right to a speedy trial. Because she was not willing to do that, and because the prosecution had not provided all this information, particularly Chad's jail call houses, the judge felt that the only appropriate remedy was to eliminate the possibility of a death penalty for Lori Vallow, to which we go, if she doesn't deserve the death penalty, I don't know who will. We cannot overstate the importance of that botched attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, because Brandon recognizes the Jeep, and although there have not been official charges filed yet, that botched attempted murder is what gets everything started, because Brandon recognizes the van, that the Jeep that he had just insured for Tylee a few months back. And there is just a lot of activity because they were already looking for JJ. They had already discovered that Tylee was missing. They're checking all this data, and the triangulation places Alex every step of the way where Tylee was murdered and buried, where JJ was murdered and buried, where Tammy's attempted murder happened. And of course, nobody has to place him because he's openly there for the police to see in the murder of Charles Vallow. Every time I think of Charles Vallow, I think of how desperate he was when he called the police. Have you guys seen that email, that video where he's telling the police that his wife has lost his head, and that her head, I'm sorry, and that she needs help, and that she's telling him she's going to kill him? Oh boy, was he ever so right. But I don't think Lori had lost her head, because all of these things that we're discovering, the buying of the burner phones, the practices in the gun ranges, the everything, the communications, the searches, the Google searches, all of that indicates a high degree of manipulation and premeditation. And so I strongly believe, guys, that the case against Lori Vallow is very, very strong. I almost, as I was listening to all of this between last night and today, felt bad for the defense. I mean, they are, by law, they are required to give her a robust defense. And we want her to get a robust defense so that there are no problems on appeal. But guys, this is a good, solid, circumstantial case. And Alex Cox, of course, made a lot of mistakes. And this is why at some point in a conversation that Lori Vallow was having that Sulema overheard, she goes, "He can't do anything right." And she was really angry. Well, that's what you get from getting a hitman that you can easily manipulate, but probably not easily train to be a flawless executioner. Let's not forget that Alex had an accident when he was 16, and according to his sister, Summer Shiflett, he never fully recovered. He always stayed with the mentality of a 16-year-old, and that's probably what Lori took advantage of, and what Chad took advantage of when they told him that his only purpose for being was to be the protector of Lori. So of course, when all these beautiful people were standing in the way of Lori and Chad being together, all they had to tell Alex is that they were actually zombies that were threatening his sister. For him to believe that by killing all these beautiful people, he was actually doing the right thing. Guys, I'll say it one more time as a pastor. If somebody asks you to check off your brain in order to worship God, run the other way. And also, the Bible, as a book of God, has been ratified and studied and verified by so many smart people that happen to be people of faith. Any other additional books that have not been clearly corroborated, we must put a big question mark on it, particularly when they seek to aggrandize and to exalt people as opposed to God. Remember, God, who had every reason to be aggrandized, came to this world as a baby, son of a very poor couple, was born in a stinky stable, and became a carpenter. And every time he healed somebody, until the time came that it was time for him to rebuild his ministry and go to the cross, he kept telling people, don't say it to anybody. Don't say this to anybody. Don't say this to anybody. But Jesus was humble and super, super low-key. And so these people, they don't look like Christ. They never did. And had the people that supported them known the Bible, understand the Bible, I think we would all be standing in a different situation. Because had they suspected that what they were saying was wrong, then all of this zombie talk, all of these people going dark, they would have fought against it. and maybe we would have at least 1 or 2 less dead bodies. This is it. This is the summary for May 1st. I'll come back either later tonight or tomorrow with your next summary. Thank you so much for joining me. And remember, there's a playlist attached to this video. I'll talk to you later. Bye.